Welcome. I'm David T. Phillips, CEO of Estate Planning Specialist, and we are beginning a new podcast today titled Estate Planning Made Easy, named after my very first book that I wrote in 1994. So the first thing we want to talk about in today's podcast is, what is estate planning? And is it really that difficult? You know, the other day I was in a meeting with a group of clients and discussing estate planning, and the whole topic was estate planning. And afterwards, the wife of the surgeon that was in the meeting said to me, "You know, David, this is really kind of a morbid topic." And I really hadn't thought about it like that before, because really estate planning is determining who gets what, when they get it, and how they get it when we are no longer in the picture. And so it's really kind of a duty and a responsibility for me, and has been for 51 years, helping people, making certain that their assets get distributed properly to those whom they love. And her point was well taken, though. You know, it's kind of a morbid thought. It's the end of life planning. And I know that a lot of cultures are very superstitious about planning your estate. And they're very worried about it. They feel that if they get into it, that it's kind of bad karma. But really, we have to use the Egyptians as our role models. They were 100% incorrect. We can't take it with us. And if we don't properly plan our estate, we create a mess. And the mess that we create will generate the absolute worst emotions in the human characteristic traits that we have. And that's hate and envy and jealousy. She wanted me to have it. No, she wanted me to have it. And so on. And so you really want to be logical, and you want to set these plans up prior to tragedy. You want to have these plans in place. And there's not only, estate planning really isn't just about planning your demise and what happens after you're gone. It's also planning what happens if you become incapacitated. Because if you are incapacitated, who's going to take care of you? Where are you going to go? And so our podcast, our weekly podcast, Estate Planning Made Easy, is going to focus on strategies that we can easily implement that will allow us to, first of all, keep predators out of our estate. Next, creditors out of our estate. And the Internal Revenue Service and your state governments. That's kind of that's our motto. Our motto really is to create and generate powerful, productive posterity. And so if we have our estate intact and our estate is transferred the way we want it, in at the time we want it, in the manner we want it, in the amounts that we want, then it's a logical transition. Now, so what is the difference between estate planning and financial planning? It's a good question. Well, financial planning is determining the investments that you use today to make sure that you don't run out of money. That's really what financial planning is. You get to retirement age and you want to make sure that the money that you have set aside for retirement for that day is going to be in your estate. And it's going to be there for you. But estate planning is what happens to the assets that you have accumulated and built if you don't use it all. I mean, I'm talking with a gentleman the other day, and his goal was, I want to die with a quarter in my pocket after living a fabulous life. And if that's your goal, then that's part of the financial planning, and make sure that happens. But what if COVID happens and you don't make it through COVID? I just had an interesting situation where a very good friend of mine, a young person, very young, just got COVID about 3 months ago. And they have serious a serious handicap as a result of COVID. So COVID was something we weren't really expecting. It wasn't on the radar scale. And so as a result, we're sitting here with this disease that has entered into our system, and it's altered and changed everything. And we weren't planning for it. And so if we had our estates in place, if we had our estate plan in place, really, COVID would just have been an illness. If it took us, it took us. We don't know the time, the day, and the hour, but as a result, we want to have a logical plan, a distribution plan. So let's talk about, first of all, what is the most common estate planning mistake. In fact, I wrote a book titled The 10 Most Common Estate Planning Mistakes and How to Avoid Them. And this is actually the 4th edition of this book that just came out right before Christmas. And it's available to our listeners by going to our website, which is epmez.com, which basically stands for what our podcast is, estateplanningmadeeasy.com. And just go to estateplanningmadeeasy.com and order this, the 10 most common estate planning mistakes. But what is the most common mistake that we make? Well, yeah, that's pretty well an obvious conclusion. The number one mistake is not having a plan at all, and or an antiquated plan, a plan that is too old. The other day I saw a plan that was 20 years old. And as I looked into the plan and I was looking at the beneficiary of his IRA, I said, well, now who is this Mary Jane? And he paused for a second, looked at his wife and said, oh no, that's my first wife. And we've been divorced for 15 years. And she's not supposed to be the beneficiary of my IRA. My current wife is supposed to be the beneficiary. So we see mistakes like that. These are plans that are outdated. You move to a new state, you have new grandchildren. Things change in your life. A death, a new spouse. Things change all the time. And so you want to make sure that your estate plan is up to date, absolutely up to date. And the way you do that really is you get your estate analyzed. And the easiest way to do an estate and a review of your estate is to give us a call at 888-892-1102 and get the process started. Get an estate analysis, have your estate reviewed by a professional, and then from there, create a logical distribution plan. And you are going to want to have a legal team involved in this process. I've seen a lot of do-it-yourself plans, and they really, really don't work. And the number one reason why they don't work is because people don't finish the job. So we need to review our estate at least every 5 years. Now, we've had several major estate planning changes in the last few years, estate planning tax changes in the last few years, and we're actually set to have another major overhaul on December 31st of 2025, when the Tax Cut and Jobs Act that Trump put into place will be repealed. And there's all likelihood that is going to occur, that we're going to see that. And so we actually need to have our plan strategically in place before that day. The main reason why I feel we have to have a plan in place before December 31st, 2025 is because there are credits that currently are available to us to use that will not be available to us after 2025. And in future podcasts, we'll be talking about this credit, the federal estate tax credit that is going to be allowed, that we currently have in place, which is currently $13 million each, $26 million per couple. But that's going to get reduced significantly. And also the gift tax allowance is currently, lifetime gift tax allowance is also $13 million. So in future podcasts, we're going to talk about strategies that you can implement to allow this to take place for you to take advantage of that. Well, let's now talk for a second about the impact of intestacy. Intestacy simply means that I die without any kind of a will, any kind of an estate plan. Well, if we do that without any kind of a will at all, we throw everything into the government's lap. And then they have to decide who gets what, when they get it, and how they get it. And that's really not going to be in your favor or the favor of your family. So we want to make sure that we have a logical plan in place, period, because intestacy is the absolute worst nightmare that you can create for your family. Now, the next alternative would be a will. A will is a nice gesture. You write things down. I want to leave this to Brinley. I want to leave this to Jocelyn. I want to leave this to Jane. I want to leave, and whatever you want to, you actually list out what you want. And a will is important. It's an important document and something that we incorporate into all of our estate plans. But a will has to go through probate. It's subject to probate. What is probate? Probate is simply the government's way of determining if you were lucid when you had your wits about you when you drafted this will. You remember the case of Howard Hughes. I think it's probably the best of all, because there were 20 wills that were presented. He was the richest man in the world at the time, and 20 wills were presented to the judges saying that this is what Howard wanted to have happen to his estate. And it was a mess. It was a total mess, a lot of chaos, confusion. Aretha Franklin, just recently, who had pancreatic cancer, certainly knew that she was going to pass away, didn't have a plan and a will in place. And so a lot of confusion was created because of that. And so you want to at least have a will. And then in that will, you want to specifically name who you want to receive, when and how and what you want them to receive. Go one step further, though, than a will. We highly recommend that you set up a revocable living trust. And for estates in excess of $250,000 with a lot of beneficiaries, you really need to set up a revocable family dynasty trust. And that's dynasty planning. And we will certainly in future podcasts talk a lot about dynasty planning. We're going to talk about trust and why they're important. And we'll have guests on estate planning made easy occasionally. We'll have my son Todd, who is an expert in retirement, in safe money retirement planning. And we want to make sure that you subscribe to our newsletter called Generational Wealth Strategies. This particular newsletter was created last June. We have thousands of subscribers. It's going very, very well. And the way you can find out about how to subscribe to Generational Wealth Strategies is to go to our website, generationalwealthnewsletter.com, generationalwealthnewsletter.com, or go to our website, again, epmez.com. Well, this is David Phillips, CEO of Estate Planning Specialists, and this is our very first inaugural podcast, and we're so happy to be here today. Glad to get this thing going finally. We've been asked to do it for many years, and we're going to cover an amazing array of topics over the next several podcasts. We're going to do this weekly. This will be a weekly podcast, and it will certainly be an eye-opener, I'm certain, for you. But the overall goal is for us to teach you how to create a powerful, productive posterity and to keep your wealth in the family. Thanks. Until next week, this is David Phillips signing off.